to the Grey Man Podcast. This retired counter-terrorism agent, lifelong martial artist, and personal defense expert joins his best friend, producer Jim, to talk about personal defense and world events. This is the Grey Man, like science.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Grey Man. This is episode, I think I get this right, 18? I think I got it right, 18. Wow. I lost track a while ago, I don't even know anymore.
Big time.
Episode 18, Whiskey and Religion, and we have an awesome show set up for you today with a very good longtime friend of mine, Mr. Bruce Pagano, who you'll see in the video and hear his voice in just a couple seconds. But we're going to discuss some really what I believe and what Bruce believes and what Jim believes is some very relevant topics for a week out from the election with Christianity and politics. Things that I think we as Christians kind of get wrong a lot of times because we're fallen people and we let ego get in the way. But before we get started with that, I'm going to let Bruce introduce himself and we'll get into the free plug. So Bruce, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
First off, I'm excited to be on the Grey Man. This is awesome. I think, Mike, we've known each other 99?
Yeah, over 20 years, 21 years.
Yeah. I remember I was telling my wife, she's like, how do you know Mike? And I was like, when I got to Ellsworth in South Dakota, he was one of the last remaining buck sergeants in the Air Force.
I still have that ID card.
You might have been the last. I'm not sure.
I think I was the last. The ID card got lost when I got promoted. Yeah. So.
Right. Yeah. That's got to end up in a museum somewhere. So we've known each other a long time. I am a retired Air Force security forces. So I actually did just under 20. I took the reduction in force option and retired with 19 years, 1 month and 18 days under my belt. Cause it was time to go. The option was there. And during that time I've done a ton of stuff. I have a master's in Christian ministry, so I've been on church staff a number of times, young adult ministry, pastoral counseling and whatnot. I'm currently a dean of students at public middle school, and that's kind of a pseudo administrator / school counselor role that deals a lot with behavior. I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Idaho, so I have a small practice on the side. And I wrote a book, so I'm an author.
Yeah. Oh, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'd like to just talk about that a little bit. I am. My goal was to be done reading the book by the time we recorded here this afternoon, but I'm about 2/3 of the way through, and part of the reason I got to a point where I was either just going to have to skim through it or just continue to read and admit my failure before God and everyone that I didn't quite get through. But I love the concept of the book. I like the flow of the book, and that's how we've gotten to what we wanted to talk about for our free ride. And for everybody that listens, the free ride is basically, until we can find someone that'll pay us to do this, we give a free plug to someone that or some brand or some company that we believe our listeners would appreciate. So if you would, as the author, I think you're probably best at maybe giving a free plug about that. I can pull up the Facebook page on the screen here if that'd help. Cool.
Yeah. So the book is called 3 Commands, Jesus's fulfillment of the law through love. And the premise behind it is, as Christians, we often communicate that the most important commands of the law is to love the Lord your God and to love your neighbor, because Jesus said that. But we forget that he was answering a question about the old covenant that the Pharisees were asking him to identify and kind of trying to trap him, right? Mm-hmm. And so as I kind of worked through ministry and kind of worked through my own wrestling with what it means to follow God, and follow Jesus, I found that I didn't understand what it meant to obey the law to love God. It's a super abstract idea to love with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so I found myself defaulting to the point that, well, if love your neighbor's the same, that's something tangible. I can do that. So I'll just love my neighbor, and by proxy, I'm loving God, I figured. And I found myself getting burnt out and just tired, because nowhere in there does it say your neighbor will love you back. So I just found myself depleting myself. And then at one point, I found God taking me to this place where he was like, but I didn't ask you to do either one of those things. Like, the Israelites couldn't even do those things, and they were my people. And so he brought me to this place where he reminded me, Jesus said, hey, the way that people will know that you're mine is that you love each other. And I just kind of started this journey on what it looks like to genuinely obey the command to love each other, and the implications of that. And what I found was, when I believe who Jesus says he is, who God says Jesus is, as our Savior and as God the Son, and I try to obey the command to love other Christians within a community so that people can identify me with Jesus, the ability to love God came, and I was more equipped to love my neighbor in a less depleting way. And I found that happens best in community, and that there's the ability to live inside of the body of Christ in a love reciprocating way that both pours and fills. And it just made more sense to me. So, yeah. So that's the premise of the book, that there's 3 commands, and we focus on 2 of them and forget that the third one is actually the thing that fulfills. Like, by obeying the command to love each other, we get to participate in the fulfillment and see made whole the old covenant. So.
And it's fascinating how you develop it. I love books that include personal stories, and yours is all about your journey, and I really appreciate that. So that's what really drew me to it. So my journey as a Christian is, well, it's ongoing, right? So I'm born again, and I really struggle with the idea of God loving me. I am each day forgiven, and I have to remind myself of that. Like, for me, that's where it begins. I am not just automatically feeling that, right? It's not just part of my life. So I really have to, that's the work that I put into my spiritual side each day. So going beyond that and imagining, as a guy that has self-loathing as one of my go-tos, like that's an automatic tape for me. How can I accept that God loves me? And that reading about that in the book, like the fact that you, as a man that has gone through this, and like you are experiencing that love, how how can I get there? What's the magic that brings that on? And I feel like I'm learning more about it, but unfortunately I can't say that the book has flipped that switch from 0 to 1 in my brain yet, but it's working towards it. So that I've been very excited. I feel almost starstruck in talking with you, because you're living the thing that I want to live in my community.
Yeah, no, and I think that's where a lot of us kind of have been fed this. You said, what's the magic? I think that's where we've lost a lot of this thing, is that there's not magic. It's not magic. And we get told, hey, accept Jesus and everything's better. Like, everything will be better. Like, I grew up thinking that. And so when everything wasn't better, clearly I'm doing something wrong. I watched an R-rated movie, or I listened to Metallica, or like I did something that I should. I held my girlfriend's hand. Oh my gosh. So clearly things, or I had a bad thought, or I looked at pornography or whatever, like things weren't just better. And what I found is, I quote my wife in the book, and I'm not sure if you got that part, but there's a part where I've wrestled with the idea of being forgiven. And she was like, well, I don't ask God for forgiveness anymore. And I was like, oh, scandalous. What? And she was like the Bible says, once you ask forgiveness and then you confess your sins, and confession and asking forgiveness are 2 different things. So when I do something that I think falls short, I confess it to God. I accept that I'm already forgiven for it, and I move forward. And I was just like, oh, everybody should think that way. That's okay. And she was like, and that's me resting in my forgiveness. Like I'm forgiven, and now I can confess it, and he loves me. And so off of that idea, I built this idea that, like, healthy spirituality is not just realizing that you're loved, but lovable. Like, you're a lovable person. God created you to be loved, makes you able to be loved. And then the other side of that is you're not just forgiven, you're forgivable. So no matter what you do, you're able to be forgiven. And that's kind of the bridge that kind of covers that gap where I don't feel loved. But if you can get to a point where you're like, oh, worthy, lovable, okay, then maybe I am loved. And then you get to experience that when you put yourself around people that will love you. So
I think this is a good teachable moment too, because we can go back to the fact that your wife taught you that, and it's inherent that's why women live longer than men, because we need adult supervision, right?
yeah, often.
So for all the
Often.
Gray Man podcast men out there, just know that we get it. I don't care what you tell your friends when you're having a drink. We know the truth,
Sure.
right? We need adult supervision.
Yep. You give your wink and you tip your glass and you're like, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly right. But it's been a journey too, because I remember Bruce pre-2000 when we served together, right? In Mike, Mike's son, I mean, I'm a fairly consistent guy across the board. What you see is what you get most of my life, but how you get that, Mike, has changed over time. It's softened,
right?
But we're different people, and this is not the Bruce that I knew back then, honestly.
Right.
But we're not the same people. Thank God, right?
Thank God.
Yeah, that we can change. So it's an interesting concept for me too, because I will tell you, as a Christian, I often ask for forgiveness. I've never thought of it that way.
Neither did I.
Short, and my first go-to is to pray and ask forgiveness. So the thought of the fact that, I'm already forgiven. Why do I have to rehash that? That just puts more pressure mentally, spiritually, physically on me to remind me that I'm never going to measure up. Why not just understand that I am forgiven, confess, and move on? It makes sense in theory.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? In theory, it makes sense. In practice, I'm going to be an idiot for a while.
Sure. Yep. And that's the time. There's no magic bullet.
So I took my guy to Sarah, actually, because
but honestly, if there's no magic fix to this, then I think we're probably done here. I mean, this has been a great episode, but if you're not just going to fix us, and no, I'm kidding.
No, buy my book and it'll fix everything.
Is it the last third that does it?
It's the last third that you missed.
But although I do have to ask this, are you remarried?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, all right. I haven't got that far in the book.
Yeah. I should probably, I don't know if I mentioned that. I should probably mention that at some point in the book. I should have mentioned that.
One of us may have a bit of a failing. Maybe it already was in there and I skipped over that chapter or something.
I go through stuff in the book and I'm like, why did I say that? Or why didn't I say that? Or how did I misspell that? I think there's one point in the book where I say that I'm talking about the couple of Jesus's followers, and I call them the sons of Jonah, and they're the sons of John. And I don't know how I missed that. So
I wasn't sure if I was going to bring this up, but since you opened the door, it's all of a sudden, not all of the sudden. And everyone on the internet will back me up.
No. And I put it through 2 editors and Grammarly and individual edits, and
absolutely fine. It was one of those, you've got all of the there, and there right so far.
Right,
so we're okay. Yeah. We can still be friends and everything, and God still loves you.
I did lean on my military EPR writing and removed as many that's as I could.
Yes, I'll tell you, as an officer, a guy who used to review stuff for a living, oh my God, that would drive me nuts. Yeah. My red pen, it looked like a lot of times when people would give me reports of investigation, my agents it would look like I slit my wrists on the paper. Like I just decided to commit suicide.
This is so bad, I want to die.
Yeah. So if it was me and that was my book, I would have just said, hey guys, I did this on purpose to set up for a number 2.
Right.
I'm really going to write a sequel.
Oh, yeah. There's a second book coming.
Exactly. See?
I thought you had to poop.
Perfect.
Oh, man.
So the Reader's Digest version of the 3 commands, if you were going to give 3 bullet points to anybody out there listening that is struggling with adhering to the Great Commission, or anything, what Jesus commands to us as adult men in a world that is increasingly tougher to be a Christian male in. Not that it's supposed to be easy. Like you said, God never said it would be easy on us, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't be easy on us. I mean, what's the growth in faith if everything is easy? What would be the 3 bullet points that you would give somebody, like marching orders?
Yeah, I don't know if I have 3, but what I would say I think the thing that is most important, I've been in so many churches that say, hey, once you accept Christ, your next step in your journey is start reading the Bible and find a place to serve on Sunday morning. And I would say that's absolutely wrong. Like, your next step should be to find a community of believers that you can learn to be vulnerable with and learn to be loved, and learn to love with, so that when you move out towards your Christian, because you look at, like, the disciples spent 3 years with Jesus before he asked them, at least 2 before he asked them to go out and then come back. And then 3 years before he asked them to go do the thing that he'd been doing, right? Paul gets saved on the road to Damascus, has this conversion experience, and then spends 3 years with Christians learning what it means to be a Christ follower and what it means to lead other people down that path. And so I would say probably the most important thing, like the number one thing you can do for your Christian walk and for you as a person, is to find a community of people that you can genuinely become real with and open those parts. And it will take time. Like, we have this home group that has been one of the couples we've been together with for 3.5 years, and the other for 2.5 years. And we're just now in this place where we're really comfortable being really open and vulnerable and being honest with each other, and calling each other our people. Like, these are my people. And I've been in church since I was 12, and this is one of the first times in my life that I've been able to be that open. And so it's that commitment to other people, because the word of God resides with the people of God. So if you want to know what God's saying, be with people that are trying to listen to God, and reading the Bible together and trying to figure out what it means to put into practice. Because we do a lot of listening on Sunday morning and a very little put into practice. And so you want to be a man of God, then follow Jesus and find someone to follow that's following Jesus. Paul, imitate Christ, imitate me while I imitate Christ. You know what I'm saying? Like, discipleship, we've missed the point that Jesus didn't call us to build leaders. He called us to make disciples, and disciples are followers and learners. And out of that, leadership grows. So you want to lead well, follow well. You want to be a good man of God, find a good man of God.
That makes a lot of sense. I think personally, for Rochelle and I think the most growth that we have had in our walk as Christians is when we joined a community group or a home. Well, community groups are what we call home group at our church.
Home group.
Yep. I think it is the absolute strongest we have become personally, as a couple, in our walk, all of that, being around other people that are going through the same things that you can, and you're right, it takes a while. It was probably a year or so before we started sharing in the group, and we've been a part of the group for about 4 years, and it's made a massive difference. I've never heard it put that way, though, because you always hear you're saved, grab a Bible, start reading, find a place to plug into the church, and then find a community group. And I was
really fortunate in my most recent church. My wife and I have joined a community church here in Bismarck, and I was fortunate in being able to do both at the same time. And I think because of that, I had some interest and talents that worked well in the spot that I'm helping serve. And at the same time, I joined a men's group that was an offshoot of a retreat dealing with specific issues as men in today's world. Porn on the internet and just the daily struggles that we have with all of the things coming at us all the time. And this is developing into creating disciples. Just what you're talking about, this really speaks to me. As a matter of fact, the concept of the 3 commands, we're studying that right now. And in our huddle is what we call it. In our huddle, it's the up, the in and the out, right? Up to God, in within the community, within the family, and then out to others, and rating ourselves on where we're at with that. So I really, to me, this was grace that all of this is happening at the same time. So everything that's happening right now is just for me, guys. I really do appreciate that.
But it's true that Rochelle and I did not. We serve, both of us serve. Rochelle runs our coffee team at our service, and I run the entire security safety program for the Pursuit. But we didn't start there. We got plugged into a community group first. But what we heard was find a place to plug into the church and find a community group. And I think it would have been tougher for us had we plugged into the positions in the church that we're in first, instead of being with the group, because it took a while. Because one of the folks in our group is one of the 3 pastors at our church. We served together in the military. He's a retired lieutenant colonel. I knew him when he was on active duty, and he kept hammering at me to take over the security program. I'm like, nah, I'm good, bro. Thanks. I don't need something else in my life. Thank you. But it was through community and through building relationships, and then understanding why through that community group serving was important and how that plugged into faith, that it mattered to me, because the other way it wasn't working. Somebody telling me just to find a place to plug into the church, I'm not serving with kids. I most often don't like my own. So why would I hang around other people's children, right? At least in the martial arts, when I teach jujitsu, I can choke them. So,
I can hit kids when I teach them martial arts.
It's called training, duh. So
that's how Mike got through parenthood.
Just karate. I'm obviously not serving there. I'm not going to be an usher. I'm not going to, I'm not on the worship team. Thank goodness for everybody out there. I'm not singing.
Thank goodness for everyone.
Yeah, you're welcome. So it really didn't click for me either. That community group, you're right. That group of followers made me understand, or helped me understand why that other level of serving was important.
Right. It draws you too. Like for me, it's my community group. It's my small group that teaches me, that has taught me, like, oh, I want to serve those in my church because I genuinely love this group of people, and I love the body of Christ. Like I had someone say to me a couple weeks ago, we were walking through the school, and they were just kind of lamenting how difficult people can be. And they were like, my problem is I don't like people. And I was like, my problem is I like people too much. Like, I like when they're mean, I'm like, why do you have to be mean? I want to like you. But like it was my small group that helped me learn, like, oh, I serve because I love them, not because they, I understand need. I get it. Like we're always shorthanded at church. I get that there's need, but I don't want to serve out of need all the time. I want to serve from a place of love more than, because you'll burn out when you're serving from a place of filling a need versus, I'm filling from a place of service. Like Jesus came to serve, not be served, right? Like we talk about servant leaders all the time, but how about servant first? And then, and that was always built out of love. It wasn't built out of, like, Jesus didn't heal people because they needed it. Like there were a lot of people that didn't get healed. But his expression of love drove him to this, like, place to heal people and to invite people. And that's the other part. You mentioned the commission, like and Jim, the thing you were talking about, up, in, out, like, and the out is always, I don't call it the Great Commission anymore. I call it the Great Invitation, because really what Jesus was offering us was the ability to invite people, like he invited the 12 disciples. He didn't tell them, hey, I'm here to make you, he was just like, come follow me. And then they chose. They were like, yeah, because he offered the same thing to the rich young ruler. And the rich young ruler was like, nope, I'm not doing it. And he walked away because he was very rich. And so he offers us the same thing. He says, go make disciples, but that go is really hey, invite people to come. And so that out is always geared towards, I want to invite people to the kingdom, to God, to the up, so that they can figure out the in, so that they can go out.
And there's a piece of that I've felt compelled to fix, that because I have a hole in that. I don't know that I have enough confidence to go bring someone and to invite someone, because in my brain, what if they ask this and I don't have the answer for
Right.
it? So I've been trying, it's that, I think you called it, was it the transactional
Mhm.
Christianity, where
Yep.
I have to do everything right and then God will love me. And with that, then I can go out and bring someone in because I'm worth having
Right.
them come into this. And I know that I have to overcome that, but those pieces are still a little bit falling apart yet. I'm seeking something to fix that.
No, and if I could just offer you this maybe freedom in that, is that the go to invite literally is not, it doesn't have to be like, there's very few people that are that guy or girl that can go out and be like, hey, come be a part of this thing. The invite is the be Christ in the presence of other people, and that helps them feel like they belong. Like when you go out and you love your neighbor, and I think we're going to talk about loving your enemy here in a minute, right? Mike, you'd said that. But when you go out and you love those people that might not feel like lovable or worthy of love, you provide this space of belonging to them, and people want to belong, right? I mean, that's the basis for why we join everything. Like, we want to belong. So you provide a space of belonging, and that enables belief. So you don't have to have this, like, the gospel, the gospel's in you. And so you don't have to have this, this diatribe of teaching, and know the Greek and the Hebrew behind it to be able to invite someone into a space where they feel like they belong and that they're genuinely loved. And it enables them to believe what you believe about Jesus and what you're saying about Jesus and what Jesus says about himself. And that's the invitation. The invitation is like, come belong. The kingdom is exclusively inclusive. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
I like that.
That's good. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
That's a great segue too, because my educational background is political science, master's degree in political science and a master's degree in U.S. history. So I tend to look at the world in a very particular way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That particular is fine.
As you know.
Jim's like, that's an okay word. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm trying to pick my words carefully. And so, and I know generations say this, that this is the most divisive we have ever seen, or this is the worst it's ever been. I don't think this is the worst it's ever been in America, but I do believe politically it's one of the most divisive times we have ever seen in America. There have been several.
I would say the 1860s were pretty bad.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and even if you go back and look at 1809, I would say, the first 10 years of the 1800s, pretty terrible too. There was a lot going on there that led to, in 1812, the British showing up in Washington and burning it down, right?
Yeah.
So I think I like to use the term one of the most, because I don't like definitive terms when it comes to history, because history is cyclic, right? Jorge Santamayor, one of my favorite historians, always said those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. Was not actually Plato. It's misquoted in it's often misquoted, and it's actually in marble in the British Museum of History. It's in the walk when you walk in the entryway. It's in marble on the wall, and it's attributed to Plato. It's actually.
I remember that though, because we were there a few years ago and we went to the Okay.
It's misquoted. It was actually him. He said a couple other things, but he also said only the dead have seen the end of war, not Plato. So I firmly believe that history is cyclic, right? If we don't study it, we repeat it, but we're stupid human beings and we're fallen, so we're obviously going to repeat it. But that's why I use the term one of the most. But you can definitely, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, say that in America today, and in most Western civilizations, but specifically in America, this is one of the most divisive times that we have seen in modernity for a lot of reasons. One of them, to me, is that both political parties have abjectly failed their constituents with the current choices for presidency. Abjectly failed their constituents, and we should be upset about that. But what that leads to is some very divisive conversations between not just American voters, but Christians in particular. And it gets very vehement. We've seen that over the last 2 weeks, some of the conversations that we've had, and I appreciate you letting me be involved in some of the conversations that you have had. Not everybody does that. Sometimes I'm just told to go away.
Right.
But
You didn't call me a communist, so I mean,
that is crazy to me, though. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast we need to have.
it is.
Yeah. Oh my God. But as believers, the fact that we can say that someone is God's candidate or this is God's party is beyond what I can wrap. I mean, honestly, what I wrap my head around. And this is and this is just taking my believer hat off and looking at it through the political science lens. You know, as a guy who's taught political science before, to be able to say it's nuts. I told somebody the other day, you know who else says that that's God's candidate and God's party? Hezbollah, and you don't like them. So how as a believer can you say that?
But I'm right.
That's why most people don't invite me to the conversation.
Yeah, I could see that.
But again, going back to our original conversation, I'm consistent throughout the years. What you see is
absolutely.
So how as a believer do we approach politics?
No. No, I have friends on both sides of the aisle that are like, it's your Christian responsibility to engage in politics. I have friends that are like, nope, like the kingdom doesn't you don't engage. I kind of lean towards us as an American. It is your responsibility to engage in the political system and and all that entails, voting, whatever. As a Christian, I can't find a place in there that it actually talks about engaging in the political process. It talks about give to Caesar, render unto to Caesar what's his. And that really is geared more towards paying taxes and like obeying the law, like obey those that are, God puts those in charge, gives authority to those who are in authority. That doesn't mean that he appoints them. Like the current president is not appointed by God, but his authority derives from God. So you participate in the political system as far as it means that you obey the law, that you pay taxes, that you are a good citizen of the government that you're under. But there's nowhere in there that says you have to vote. Like, and for me, it comes to this place where like you vote your conscience, you vote your values, and if there's a candidate where you find it difficult, if there's 2 candidates or 3 candidates or 4 candidates where you find it difficult to vote with a good conscience, then I don't think that you're out of your realm as a Christian of not voting. And then you just accept the space that you accept the leadership that's there. And it should be done without, like, you can lobby. We live in this great nation where you have a voice and you can protest and you can stand outside the state house and say, hey, change this. You can lobby for laws to be changed, but at the end of the day, you follow the laws of the land. You pay your taxes. You be a good citizen, because Christians are good citizens and they try to garner the goodwill of all those around them and live peaceably as far as it concerns them. So yeah, I don't know that you have to participate. I
didn't want to startle you, but you're being snuck up on.
I know who that is.
I'm in a meeting, baby. Love you. That's my 5-year-old daughter, Hazel.
All right. Just thought your wife was really short. I didn't know.
Okay. So I don't know if that helps with the answer, but
it's actually an interesting concept because I had not thought about it that way. As a guy who has an education in political science and is very much into the political endeavor, it never the idea as a Christian that it's okay not to vote because of your convictions makes sense to me as a Christian. But there's this dichotomy of Mike Cyan, right? Where there's the guy who is flag waving, fireworks shooting, Second Amendment loving citizen, right? That's like, man, you gotta be engaged. But that doesn't mean that when I cast my vote and I have my ballot, that I have to make a vote on a particular thing.
Right.
I can abstain from voting for the president of the United States, and still vote for many things that are state and local.
Right.
So there's one challenge that I'd have to the concept of the Bible doesn't say, what we should do in politics. And this comes from the book, so I'm going to quote you and deal with it. Right. And not what did Jesus do, or what would Jesus do? What did Jesus do? So is there any model that Jesus had for us dealing with government or politics aside from, being on the cross, right? Because that was a political thing.
Yeah. So I'm of the mind that the kingdom of God has a very specific politic to it. There's a polis, right? There's what's that Greek word, Mike? Polis. What does that mean?
Stop it right now. So there is a way of doing things, and there's a correct way of approaching things.
Right.
Yeah.
There's concepts and principles and values that gather us as a people around a specific thing. And so like the idea of a metropolis is the core of that polis is, there we go. Administrative religious city center, and distinct from the rest of the city. It's also signified the body of citizens. So there's this idea that a polis is a collection of people that kind of agree on some of the same things, right? And there's this agreement around specific things, whether it's religious or political or whatever. And so the kingdom of God has its own politic. Like Jesus was teaching, like the whole Sermon on the Mount is Jesus communicating the politic of the kingdom of God. You know what I'm saying? So like people get really frustrated when you say that. They're like, no, there's no politics in the kingdom of God. Nope, maybe not, but there is a politic. There is a stance in the way that the kingdom operates, right? And so what did Jesus do when it comes to engagement? Jesus preached his politic for the kingdom of God and said, God, like invited heaven to earth, like on earth as is in heaven. So like his desire was that the politic of heaven would dwell, like that his people would embody the politic of the kingdom, and would live in a way that benefited the oppressed and benefited the widow and the orphan, and was kind to the sojourner, and loved the enemy, and fed those that need to be fed, and clothed those that need to be clothed. And turned the other cheek, and viewed hate as murder, and viewed lust as adultery. And like there was this very, and if we walk as a body inside of that politic, that should inform, as Christians, that should inform the way that we vote and engage. So like abortion's a huge single issue vote for a lot of people. There's this video that was just released by another podcast. I don't know. Can I say who?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So from the Holy Post podcast, Phil Vischer and Sky Jitani. Phil Vischer's the creator of VeggieTales. Like that's that guy. He just put out a video that talked about why voting for the president does little to impact the issue of abortion, but voting at the state and local level does. Being engaged with birth centers in your city impacts abortion numbers more than voting for the president. So
I say this all the time. The most important vote that you will ever cast is in your city and state elections, period.
Right.
And people don't believe that, but this is a great reinforcement of that, especially when we're talking about the body, what the concept of the body politic.
Right.
Either both secularly and in the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
I mean, you absolutely cannot believe that the president really has any sway or can do any single thing by himself for whatever the issue is that they're talking about.
Right. And of course he does have sway in areas, more sway in
as long as it's
different areas, like foreign policy.
Yeah, as
he
long
gets
as
engaged
in the executive branch and he can use the pen. Yeah.
Right. But so they're going to have a little bit more engagement when it comes to things like foreign policy and how we engage people on the world platform. But like we have two other branches that both introduce law and then make laws and interpret law and the executive branch enforces law. Like, I mean, there's this, that's a simplistic way of viewing it, I'm sure, but
the way most people understand it, though, and that's good.
Right.
And again, it's an interesting concept about the body politic secularly and the body politic in the kingdom of heaven. And
Right.
I have never actually heard those two differentiated, because most people put them together,
right,
and cast their vote. Another divisive topic is equality of marriage, and that has set me apart from a lot of, because I used to be a Republican. I'm not. I haven't been for a
Right.
long time.
Me too.
I'm a conservative, fiscally conservative, independent, center right guy, but I'm an independent voter, and I 100% believe in the equality of marriage, because it's first off, it's a secular issue, and our Constitution protects that in every way, shape, or form. And we are not a theocracy. And I say this all the time to people. Thank God that we're not, because you and I have been in theocracies, and they're terrible places to be.
Terrible places to be.
Nobody wants.
There's a lot of no-handed people running around because they stole something.
That's exactly right. So the idea that you can separate both hopefully helps some people out there struggling with November 4th this year.
I don't know if this helps, but like from the what did Jesus do point of view, like Jesus engaged, like Jesus adhered to the government that was in place. I mean, even to the cross. Like you might argue like, yeah, but he knew he was going there anyway. But he still submitted to the will of man when it came to an execution, and acknowledged that, like, Caesar's like, hey, I hold your life and death in my hands. He's like, you really don't. Like, you think you do, but you don't. But he still submitted to it. Like, he still accepted the charges. But even before that, he still submitted to paying taxes. And he, like, granted, he somehow made money appear in a fish's mouth and then pay taxes with that. But I mean, like, wouldn't that be nice?
I want that fish.
Yeah. So, but he still submitted to the structures of the government that were in place, all the while putting the politics of the kingdom of heaven above them, so that's how he lived his life. He lived his life within the kingdom of heaven politic, and participated in the earthly government that was there. But he put the kingdom politics so high above it that it got him killed. Like, he said things that got him murdered on a cross that was, by all accounts, was not an instrument of religion. It was an instrument of power and humiliation. Like, it was the guillotine. You know what I'm saying? Like, I heard a podcast guy say the other day, it was the guillotine. Like, it was a political statement of the time to humiliate rabble rousers and rebels. So I think you can participate in our government while still maintaining a high view and high application of the kingdom.
So what advice would you give someone out there, a believer, who is either frustrated or at a loss, or on the other side, like completely zealot for one or the other party in this season of America?
Can I just say, don't be a jerk?
Yes.
100%.
What I would say is to two different things to both sides. One, if you are doing your best to follow Jesus, and that land and your convictions and what you find important in the gospel and the kingdom of heaven lands you voting for someone other than the conservative Republican ticket, it's okay. You're still a Christ follower. Don't let anybody tell you different. There's a reason why historically the Black community over the last 60 years, 70 years have voted Democrat. Like, they were heavily Republican for a little bit. I think I saw a video that said that the first 29 Black House of Representatives were Republicans. They identified purely as Republican. The first Black people elected to Congress, the House of Representatives, were Republican. But that changed over time. And so for you to say, if you vote for anybody other than a Republican ticket, you're not a Christian. You're dismissing the salvation. Like, one, you're playing God, and you're dismissing the salvation of a whole bunch of people who I know personally, some of them, and they are Jesus loving, Jesus following, and their life experience has moved them towards voting for this along this ticket line or whatever. You're still a Christian. I would want to give freedom and hope to them. The other side, for those that are saying, nope, you have to, I'm zealot about this, you have to vote this or you're not a Christian, pause for a second, think about Christ and what freedom and peace looks like and what love looks like, and just consider that maybe that's not a right stance. Because at least if you consider it, it takes a lot of work to ignore it.
Yeah, I like that. There's some inter-reflection to determine your outward stance.
Right. And then argue on Facebook continuously.
Yeah.
Do that too.
Yes, you should. And call everybody stupid and make sure they know that if they don't agree with you, that you're dumb.
What happened? No, we were on a good path there, guys. I thought we had this. I thought we were making headway.
We have both experienced this within the last 2 weeks because, again, because of who I am and my education and background, and because we have the podcast, I often put up questions on my personal page that I want discussion on, but I want open, educated, honest discussion on. And when you start swearing at people and calling them stupid names, well, we're done. And I'm going to remove them. But and Bruce just had the exact same thing. That's the one that I caught on to and tried to plug into. It was, people are just losing their mind.
They're really, like, I understand that this is important. I had so Barna, the Barna group does a lot of statistical research, surveys. They've been asking this question to Americans for about 50, 60 years now. But the question is, if your child married someone of the opposite political party, how would you feel? And most of, like, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, most of the response was, maybe 60s, 70s, most of the response was, I wouldn't like it, but, you know, it is what it is. Like, it's okay. It doesn't matter. And what they found is most people during that time just disagreed. Like they would look at people of the opposite political party and just realize, oh, we disagree. Like, I don't agree with you. Like, and that's okay. If my kid marries your son, like, it is what it is. Nowadays, we've moved away from just disagreeing with each other to actually thinking that the other political party is evil. Yep. And if there's evil, I can't have anything to do with evil. And if the answer often now is, if my kid marries someone from the opposite political party, I have to disown them because they've given themselves over to evil, essentially.
There's such hardcore political polarization that it's a little frightening. So I have the scale, and a couple of my friends and I have the scale, and it's a 1 to 10. Between 1 and 10, how nervous are you about the current climate in America, our ability to continue in a democratic republic? And I'm about a 5. I got some friends that are like 8s and 9s. I've got some friends that are 3s, but I'm about a 5. Right. I can go either way, right? And the reason I say that is because I've had this discussion a couple times with people that the farther we move away from the crucible of freedom from which we were formed, and we have some every once in a while. The Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War II was a big one. And that's the last big one. I've served in Desert Storm and Kosovo and Bosnia and Iraq and Afghanistan, but those aren't the crucible of freedoms we're talking about. It's World War II. The farther we move away from World War II, the less civilized society becomes, because we were all pulling on that same branch. It meant something to us. We were a very civilized society in the 50s, 60s. I mean, excluding the abject racism, obviously, that is still present in parts of society today. And anybody who disagrees is not watching society, doesn't truly understand the struggle, right? But the farther we move away from that, the less civilized we become. And I think we're so far removed now at 80 years post crucible of freedom that it's okay. A civilized society is a polite society because there's immediate feedback, right or wrong. I talk about this when I talk about civil societies in personal defense in the 50s. If you said something about my wife, I was very within my rights to punch you in the nose and break it. Right. So a civilized society is a polite society. And now we've gone so far to the other side that that it's okay to be this vehemently hateful about a subject that in the grand scheme of things, I mean, again, the most important vote you can cast is in your city,
Right.
in your county, and your state elections. But
So
we've been led to believe that it's the national election that matters most.
and I would have a challenge for both of you in that. So I'm known in my circles of friends as I don't engage in Facebook. I don't do friends. I don't do things. I help out. Like, this is the most I've been with it is because of the Gray Man podcast. I help out with that a little bit. So my challenge for the two of you then is, why do you engage with the negativity and the crap that happens in social media? Like, I don't get it because I haven't. And if someone does that and they're swearing, why do you feel compelled to even give a response or to continue that conversation? Why not just ignore it?
So for me, in person, and I can only talk personally.
Sure.
And there are two ways you can look at it. One is I need to make sure people understand that I am right all the time, and that my way is the best way. Right. And those are fairly easy to pick out right away.
That is a very honest answer. Thank you, sir.
Right. But for me, the reason I love these discussions is I learn something every single time. I'm not out to change anybody's opinion or belief, because there's no way you can do that over social media.
Right.
If Christianity has taught us anything, it is personal interaction and relationships that change a heart, period. What I do is I learn perspective during conversations from people that I normally don't talk to on a daily basis, because I have a wide variety of friends on social media from every spectrum you can think of, on the political spectrum, belief spectrum, everything, right? Socioeconomic, gender, and sexual orientation, I'm across the board, and I love that. And so when I have these conversations, I get to see different perspectives, and I'm not looking to change them. What often happens is it changes me a little bit at a time. There's been no major shift in me. Again, what you see is what you get 9 times out of 10, but it changes the way I view the lens in which I view the world, and that individual and that issue comes into a little more focus. And I like that about social media, because I can talk to people that I don't get to see or haven't seen in 20 years, right? Or family that is across the globe, or friends that have dispersed, and we can have that continual conversation. That's not normally what it's used for, but that's why I use it. So I defer.
Yeah, no. And I do want to say this, the thing that that I appreciate about you, Mike, is that even if it doesn't change the bigger picture of things for you, your ability to receive it and consider it is important. And one of the things I shared with my wife is Mike's always been respectful, like always. Like, Mike 1999 and Mike 2020 are two different guys. But the common thread is always been respectful, always a respectful person. And I appreciate that. Like, I don't have to agree with you, and you don't have to agree with me. And you're like, no, like I defer to the fact that I don't have a degree in political science. I don't understand the system to the extent at which you do, and I haven't participated in some of these crazy things that you participated in. That if you talk about, you will have to come kill me. I understand that completely. For me, I participate. I like to think I participate because I'm trying to mess up the Facebook algorithm for my feed, because I get just as much BLM stuff as I do Ben Shapiro. So I try I try and keep it pretty. But really, I think why I engage, one, I try not to engage in the, like, once the name calling starts, I'm like, oh, you don't actually want to have a conversation, so I'm done. That's not what this is. But I know there's those people out there that are like, I don't usually post political stuff, but here's this. And I'm like, no, but then you do. Like, you're not that person that doesn't post political stuff. I do post political stuff, and I try and be intentional about why I post it. And my intention is civil discussion, like helpful civil discussion, because there are times where I pick up stuff and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Like, man, I didn't even consider that. That's important. But also, I like this last one that I posted a couple weeks ago was to provide a path to freedom for those people that were being told you're not a Christian if you vote for Biden. And the premise of the article, even though the guy was a little bit antagonistic against Trump, the premise of the article was you're still a Christian if you vote for Biden, and that's okay. And just realize that if you vote for Biden, there will be things from a Christian point of view that you will have to stand against. And he said that. And I think that's a good engagement with any political candidate, is if I vote for this person because they match some of my religious convictions, my personal convictions, my core values, I'm going to have to stand against them on some of these things. And whether, like, I have a buddy that said, hey, one of the things that's important to me is the immigration issue, but not just border security, the way we treat immigrants and providing a path to citizenship, which has always been a thing in America. Like, it's written on our Statue of Liberty that there's a way, and that the way right now is convoluted. It's super difficult to become a citizen, and people aren't just coming here just because they have nothing better to do on a Sunday. I mean, like, people come here because they see the opportunity, you know what I'm saying? Like, they see a chance for freedom. And when they say again?
We are the beacon of freedom and light in the world. I get that.
Yeah. And so I have a buddy that's like a really conservative guy, and he's just like, look, border security is important to me, but let people in without treating them like garbage. And so if you vote Trump and you don't agree with his foreign policy immigration thing, then you might agree with him on military issues and like all this other stuff, but you're going to have to stand against him. And it's okay. Like, just because you vote for him doesn't mean you can't stand against him in the policies that you don't agree with, that are antithetical to Christian values. And you can do that. And nobody's going to be like, idiot, you voted for him. Can I say idiot? I'm idiot. Idiot, you voted for him.
Say all the words.
Now you have to live with it.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, people think they're so in, like, no, I voted for him, I have to support everything. And like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Like, no, you don't.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to the Obama administration for 8 years. And I tell people this all the time. I did not vote for President Obama, but he was still my president because I am a citizen of this United States, and I believe in that office 100%, and I respected him as the president. Yeah. And I 100% supported him on equal marriage, and that drove people absolutely batshit crazy when I did that in my friends group. And that's okay. I don't have to like all of this and then ignore this. I can still support this. I can still push for this in my state, and nationally. I can lobby. I can talk to my congressmen, my senators, my representatives. Just like you said, it's okay to be both. We have come to this point in America where there has to be this abject polarization, period.
Right.
Or
hey, do you think that we've lost the ability to live in cognitive dissonance, like in a duplicit mindset?
I think we're really, really close. And I think it's been over the last probably 20 years, we've lost that at the undergraduate and graduate level. We're training that out of people, honestly. And social media obviously did us no favors in that. It over the 10 years, it's made it worse. But I think we've lost that cognitive dissonance ability to live there. And
to live in that tension.
Yes, and we're losing the ability to appreciate the Socratic argument, to ask, you say something to me and I ask you why, so why do you feel that way? And then have you explain it to me in a logical, educated, and there's always bias. I hate to say unbiased. We have some bias, but you know the bias.
But maybe unemotional. Like, I can be passionate, but not grossly emotional.
Yeah, less emotional, maybe.
I always say facts over fiction. You want to convince me of something, because I'm an emotional guy with some things, obviously.
Right. Me too.
And you're talking, and you should be. And any man who says that he's not, I believe, is a liar. We have something that emotionally ties us to something. But I say, you want to convince me of something, fact over fiction, or fact over our feelings. You know what I mean? Give me the facts, and then let my feelings determine how I go about that. But we've lost that ability to do that. Or we're losing that ability today, and we're definitely losing that ability, I think, in the faith community.
Oh, for sure. I agree.
I think that is the biggest hamstring for us reaching other people in this day and age where it's so polarized that we forget that we are Christians first and not a Republican or a Democrat. In my opinion.
And so I'm going to say to that, the thing that I said in pre-show, that this guy named Mike Gary in a podcast I was just listening to made the point that you need to realize that you have more in common with a Christian in an opposite political party than you do with a non-Christian in your political party. Christ is the thing that we have in common, and that is bigger than any issue. And so when we're looking to seek unity with each other, that should be the main focus, is unity amongst the body. And that doesn't mean agreement in political stance. It's just agreement in what Jesus teaches us.
I think that is a perfect capstone.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't want to add anything else because I don't want to ruin it.
Well, I'm gonna be the first. I know you guys have been friends for a long time, but I would very much like it if I could extend the invitation, Bruce. I'd love to have you on Whiskey and Religion again sometime. This has been a fantastic discussion.
Cool.
And definitely want to continue it. Maybe I'll have that magic thing happen that we talked about in the last third of the book. I'll want you on next week. We'll see how this goes.
You'll have to buy the new book.
In the meantime, nice. In the meantime, we do have this tradition on the show of doling out shitty choices, and the tradition has become that our guest also gets to choose from these shitty choices. So I have three things that I will propose to you, and the third one right now is always the same. The third one you can always select to giggle like a schoolgirl whenever someone fires a weapon. And as you can imagine, Mike doesn't want to choose that one. So my goal is to get him to have to choose it with two other really shitty choices. And this week, the other two, I tried to make them specific for both of you guys. So let's see. Bruce, what do you think of this? Number one, you can only type 10 words per minute, regardless of what the medium is, whether it's a keyboard or your phone. You're limited to 10 words per minute maximum. Or others around you speak at half the speed you do in every conversation. Or you giggle like a girl whenever someone fires a weapon. So, screws on you guys this time. What do you think?
Oh, okay. So I can, the 10-minute, 10 words a minute. I can't. The way that I operate, I mean, just writing in general, I just couldn't do it. So I can't. The half speed, no way. I would be like, spit it out. I would finish their sentences. I'd be like, so you mean? And they're like, no, I don't mean that. Or actually, they'd be like, no. But the giggle like a school. that is a shitty.
And this is one I don't know for sure you stand on handguns or with weapons, but I would assume.
No, I'm 20 years shooting. I love shooting. Although the military does make shooting not fun as much as possible.
Right.
I think they make everything not fun as much as possible. I would do the giggle like a schoolgirl because I think I would make it fun. Like, that's so fun. Look at you shoot. Well, I did it. Nobody even had to be shooting. I did it for you.
All right. So we've got that now, just for the ongoing listeners of the show, that doesn't mean we're going to retire number 3 because Mike has to select it in order to retire it. So now to Mike, you can only type 10 words per minute always at maximum. Others speak at half speed in every conversation, or you're going to giggle like a schoolgirl whenever someone fires a weapon. Where you at, buddy?
I shoot and I teach shooting way too much in my life for number 3 still. I just do. I mean, I am on the range a lot or teaching people handguns through Spectrum Tactical a lot. I can't do it, man. Nobody would pay me to teach them ever again if I was like that. It would end that business. So that one's gone.
All right.
I've known some people that have spoke at half speed before, and I kind of want to punch them in the face because my default is violence. Obviously, all the time. My default is always violence. So we can assume logically that number 2 has got to go too. So probably the first choice at 10 words a minute is going to be good for me because I will shut up and pay attention to what I'm writing and probably not put out half of what I put out.
Actually, so do you type your own reports at work, like when you're doing police work?
I do.
Oh, so
yes.
that would suck. That would suck bad. If you had somebody else, if you just dictated them, that wouldn't be a big deal. But you type your own reports, that sucks.
You're hourly, right? So it's fine. You're hourly.
Oh no, then you're good, man. Overtime.
Yeah, it's fine.
All
Or
right.
I'll just dictate somebody else to do it.
There you go. Yeah, so we're up against the clock, gentlemen. This has been a fantastic show. Mike, I defer to you for any last words as we round out this program.
I just want to thank Bruce for taking the time to come out here. It's been a while since we've been face to face and been able to talk, and it's been awesome. We need to do it again. It's been far too long since we've talked face to face. So thank you again for coming out. Any last words, Bruce?
No, I just like you can. I do it. Can I plug my podcast?
Please.
I got a podcast called Folding Chair Theology, and you can get that anywhere podcasts are. My book's still available on Amazon, 3 Commands. And yeah, so
Thank you so much for being here. It's been a fantastic show, and we definitely need to do this again. Check out the book, everyone.
I loved it.
I can't speak to the podcast. I'll check it out, and I'll let everybody know. How about that?
Go check out the podcast, maybe. I don't know.
Please do. All right, you guys take care.
Hello.
Find us on Facebook, YouTube, and your podcast app at The Gray Man Podcast. All rights reserved 2020. Skunk and Gator Creations.